Man is an animal that makes bargains. No other animal does this. No dog exchanges bones with another. Science is the great antidote to the poison of enthusiasm and superstition. Consumption is the sole end and purpose of all. Production and the interest of the producer ought to be attended to only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. No society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. To feel much for others and little for ourselves, to restrain our selfishness and exercise our benevolent affections constitute the perfection of human nature. Resentment seems to have been given us by nature for a defense, and for a defense only. It is the safeguard of justice and the security of innocence. Little else is requisite to carry a state to the highest degree of opulence from the lowest. Barbarism, but peace, easy taxes, and a tolerable administration of justice, all the rest being brought about by the natural course of things. The theory that can absorb the greatest number of facts and persist for the longest time in explaining them is the one that must rule all observation. The learned ignore the evidence of their senses to preserve the coherence of the ideas of their imagination. On the road from the city of skepticism, I had to pass through the valley of ambiguity. People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion. But the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices. The first duty of the sovereign, that of protecting the society from the violence and invasion of other independent societies, can be performed only by means of a military force. In regards to the price of commodities, the rise of wages operates as simple interest does. The rise of profit operates like compound interest. The subjects of every state ought to contribute towards the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities. Virtue is more to be feared than vice, because its excesses are not subject to the regulation of conscience. The disposition to admire and almost to worship the rich and the powerful, and to despise, or at least to neglect, persons of poor and mean condition is the great and most universal cause of the corruption of our moral sentiments. As soon as any man says of the affairs of the state, "What does it matter to me?" the state may be given up for lost. To love our neighbor as we love ourselves is not merely a counsel of perfection, it is the law of all men. The man of system is often so enamored with the supposed beauty of his own ideal plan of government that he cannot suffer the smallest deviation from any part of it. Though our brother is upon the rack, as long as we ourselves are at our ease, our senses will never inform us of what he suffers. In order to form a market, it is not necessary that any one of the parties should have any knowledge of the particular circumstances of the others. The market price of every particular commodity is regulated by the proportion between the quantity which is actually brought to market, and the demand of those who are willing to pay the natural price of the commodity. The value of any commodity ... to the person who possesses it and who means not to use ... or consume it himself, but to exchange it for other ... commodities is equal to the quantity of labor which it enables him to purchase or command. The real price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. Every man is rich or poor according to the degree in which he can afford to enjoy the necessaries. It is the highest impertinence and presumption, therefore, in kings and ministers to pretend to watch over the economy of private people and to restrain their expense. The real price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. The great source of both the misery and disorders of human life seems to arise from overrating the difference between one permanent situation and another. A nation is not made wealthy by the childish accumulation of shiny metals, but is enriched by the economic prosperity of its people. The annual labor of every nation is the fund which originally supplies it with all the necessaries and conveniences of life which it annually consumes. Every man is, no doubt, by nature first and principally recommended to his own care, and, as he is fitter to take care of himself than of any other person, it is fit and right that it should be so. The produce of the earth, all that is derived from its surface by the united application of labor, machinery, and capital, is divided among three classes of the community: those who live by rent, those who live by wages, and those who live by profit. The multitude of regulations ... the numberless restraints ... imposed upon the inland trade ... break ... down the free circulation of capital and labor. The capital which an individual brings into the common stock of the society is of a greater or less value according to the quantity of labor which it can command. The consumption of luxuries in general, and consequently the demand for them, is in every country extremely limited. The real price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. The interest of the dealer, however, in any particular branch of trade or manufacture is always in some respects different from, and even opposite to, that of the public. The interest of the producer ought to be attended to only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. Subscribe and share.